did you guys specifically look and identify because why did you feel that the American church needs saving?
Yeah, I mean, the first chapter of the book, which we've kind of joked, if you only read the first chapter, it's kind of a depressing book. And if you read the whole book, it's a very hopeful book, because we started kind of on the problem, and we felt like it was, we should be pretty blunt in our assessment of like the American church, for all that it's got going for, is in a pretty bad place in a lot of ways. I mean, some of that is looking at numbers, looking at decline of Americans who go to church at all or who identify as Christians, and especially if you look at younger generations. Some of that is also related to people, not joining the church in younger generations, but also people leaving, particularly evangelical Christianity, which is the sort of the corner of the church that we're all rooted in. And then we looked at some of the reasons that we see that happening. And I mean, we can all think of some pretty bad public relations that the American evangelical has had in the last few years, maybe the last decade, abuse scandals, leadership scandals, hypocrisy, a polarization politically that has just, become a situation where a lot of outsiders associate Christianity with politics more than with anything else. Mm-hmm. I think COVID has then just exacerbated that, and some of the tensions in our society have been exacerbated in some ways by elements of the church. So, we really wanted to look at that situation and say, we think this is a troubling situation. We used the analogy of it's a sinking ship in some ways, but it's also a sinking ship that we may have been drilling the holes. It's not all stuff. It's not all people outside sort of in the culture. It's also situations that within the U.S. church, and especially the white evangelical U.S. church that, is my part of it, that we have some real responsibility for. And that's where we wanted to start the conversation. I know some people will be, push back on that. And even the idea of reputation, some people will say, well, yeah, we're supposed to be hated by the world. That's in the New Testament. But the things that we find that we're often disliked for in our larger society are not often our theology or our culture, our distinct doctrines. I'm paraphrasing Russell Moore here, but oftentimes the people who have a negative view of American evangelicalism, it's not because they don't like what we believe. It's because they have evidence that we don't necessarily believe what we say we believe. There's been failures to live up to what we say we believe in a whole number of ways. So that's sort of why we think the American church needs saving. And then we pivot to where we see some hope. And we think, a God-ordained way that God is using the church around the world to help bring some new voices into Christianity across the world, including here in the U.S.